Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. We are the cornerstone of security in the Southeast.
Welcome, everybody, to Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. I'm your host, Rick Strawn, the president of Paradigm Security Services. We are excited to be with you again today on Business RadioX. We are broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio located in the beautiful Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel in Duluth. In addition to Paradigm Security Services, this show is also brought to you by Soulsby's Garage and the Manna Scholarship Fund. On every show, we feature businesses and organizations in the Atlanta area, especially those that serve Gwinnett County, and a lot of times we do nonprofits and people that are running in the political arena. While all businesses have security concerns, not all are about physical security, and we'll touch on that and other related aspects of security as we go through the course of our shows. Our guest today, I'm extremely happy to have back with me, Dr. Rich McCormick. A lot of you are going to know who he is. Those that don't, you're fixing to have a great show as you listen to him tell a little bit about himself. And we talk about the things that are going on right now in the political arena and just overall around the world right now. There's so much going on. Rich is running for, as the district lines are drawn right now, the Georgia 7th. We'll see where that lands after September, I guess, when they redraw them. Rich, fantastic having you here.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm really happy about this.
Well, I appreciate you coming. And one of the things, just give me a little brief synopsis of who you are and tell the people that don't know, which if there are any.
Certainly. So for those of you who have not been paying attention to the last $20 million race, in which we lost a very narrow decision to Carolyn Bourdeaux, the current 7th District Congresswoman. We had an extremely ambitious plan to take a open seat, and it was a slugfest. At 1:40 at night, we were told we won the election by a lawyer who'd done 6 elections prior to that, and then about 10 minutes later, right around 2 o'clock, which is, as we witnessed in this last election cycle, around 2 o'clock, all kinds of craziness happened around the nation. And there's a lot to be said about the drop boxes and the 60,000 votes that all of a sudden showed up from all these drop boxes that were the bilingual, especially here in Gwinnett, which is the only county that had bilingual ballots. The system crashed 7 times. You had just all kinds of mayhem break loose, and all of a sudden we went from being 5,000 up to 10,000 down in just a matter of minutes.
It's amazing.
And then we were told there was a mistake and that we actually won, and then we were told we lost. And I said, okay, hold up, don't tell me anymore until we get out the roller coaster. And ultimately, though, we did end up losing a very narrow election cycle. We have targeted this. We mean the Republican Party have targeted this race as one of the top 10 in the nation. It's one of only 11 races the American Action Network has invested a significant amount of money in, which is part of the Congressional Leadership Fund by McCarthy and the leadership of the Republicans. We believe that we'll be one of the top races in America again, and we'll be a big part of taking back the House majority.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's one thing that's important is the majority. That's got to happen because there's just too much craziness going in the world right here. I appreciate you coming in because I know that you spent the night in the ER doing your doctor thing. So, I've been there. I worked those all nights before, and it's tough getting in there and staying all night and then coming in the day. Let's start off by talking about the thing that's in the news the most right now, and people are going to say, well, I wonder which topic that is. But right now, I guess it would be Afghanistan. I know you've served. You were a Marine pilot, and you served over there. And so you've got firsthand knowledge of what it's like over there. In fact, we were talking before we came on, you've got firsthand knowledge of basically everything that's going on in here with a hands-on from that to COVID to Haiti. But let's just start off with Afghanistan. Give us your take on the fiasco.
Yeah, so very disappointed. This is literally a modern-day Vietnam. the way it was handled mostly. I know several veterans from Vietnam. I had two uncles that flew for the Air Force in Vietnam. I know Major General Levingston, one of the only surviving Georgia Medal of Honor winners, who just has a phenomenal story. If you ever read about it, just an amazing guy. There are so many people who served in Vietnam. In fact, I was just posting about this the other day. We got banned from social media because of a Facebook post I did. It was very, very tactful, actually. It just criticized the way we handled Afghanistan and just what a blight it was to those men and women who served over there, gave time away from their families, or gave the ultimate sacrifice to all those men and women over in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. The tens of thousands who have died, Afghanis who are patriots who fought for their country. For all those people who are still, standing up for their great country. There's the women who prepared their bodies for the death and burial by just so they could have the freedom to go and vote and be ready to give the ultimate sacrifice just to have the freedom to vote. That one of the things that really struck me is the people really want freedom. It's a universal thing. Now, at the same time, though, I will say one of the things we were briefed on before we went over there, and this is not secret information or anything like that, but why is it that the Afghani people switch sides so quickly? And this is one of the things that Joe Biden was so quick to criticize. Well, they have to fight for themselves, so we can't just do it all for them all the time. They needed to do what they needed to do, and they didn't do it. That's his mantra. That's his defense, right? That they didn't do what they're supposed to do. But if you think about, first of all, and don't let me digress on this point, but how many countries in the world are we still involved in that we've historically been occupying, if you will, or been a part of that? We're still in Korea. We're still in Japan. We're still in Italy. We're still in Spain. We're still in Germany. We're still in Iraq. We're all over the world right now.
Absolutely.
We'd be in the Philippines if they didn't want us there right now. Now, they didn't want us to leave Afghanistan. I promise you that. We decided that it was just an unpopular thing to do, even though people weren't really paying attention to it. We had about 2,500 troops over there, which is less than we have in Spain right now, by the way.
Yeah.
Think about that. And as far as I know, Spain is a fairly stable country. But think about the kind of things that we could have avoided. We weren't getting any casualties over there. We were supporting them through drone strikes, through logistics, through intelligence. We were stabilizing that region. And all we had to do is just be there. Yep. And it didn't cost us hardly anything. I was there during the drawdown stage in 2016. I was head of emergency medicine in Kandahar, Afghanistan, at NATO Role 3 hospital. We were a big part of supporting some very strategic special forces insurgents. We were also there to support Afghani special forces and some of the VIPs in that area. One of the things I remember happening when I was there, and this is one of the reasons we have problems over there, they have a very corrupt government system, much like in Vietnam, where we were propping up a government that wasn't entirely legitimate. Now, some of these warlords that survived the Russian occupation became generals and became regional commanders in Afghanistan. That's part of the problem. They were corrupt. Now, every time you had an amazing Afghani come up into power who was rising through the ranks legitimately through meritocracy, all the things that you think that would happen in American society, unfortunately, you make enemies on both sides of the fence, just like in Mexico. Whenever you have a good politician come up in Mexico, either the drug lords are going to get you or the government are going to get you. You're going to be assassinated. Same thing's happening in Afghanistan. We had this amazing general coming up through the ranks, and my interpreters literally told me he's a dead man. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, everybody loves him.
He's not corrupt.
And when everybody loves you, you're going to get killed because the warlords are going to see you as somebody who is
you're a
threat to their power. And then the Afghani the Taliban, of course, are going to see you as somebody to be trifled with too. So that person got assassinated, sure as heck. I mean, within a week of them telling me that, he was assassinated. And then they started pointing out the other corruption. I can kind of see the writing on the wall, but we were the one stabilizing force. Now, if you think about it, historically, and every Marine Corps officer, by the way, has to go through command and staff. If you make rank, basically major and going up towards lieutenant colonel, you have to go to command and staff. We learned all about Vietnam. We learned all about the commitment to a cause. We learned about stability. And one of the things that struck me is since World War II, there's not been a whole lot of shuffling of borders other than the Cold War and with what Soviet Union did with invading the Eastern Bloc countries. The reason is because the United States has been involved worldwide. We've stabilized the borders. We have made this world really kind of behave itself. We are the world's police,
Absolutely.
Like it or not. Some people hate it. Some people, I understand where Rand Paul is coming from. Those people who are more isolationists, we shouldn't be involved. I understand what their point is. But quite frankly, any country that is retracted into an isolationist standpoint has become obsolete. You saw it clear back in the 15th century when China was literally the world power, would dwarf any fleet from England, which was the world power in Navy at the time, just dwarfed them. There's strong evidence that in 1421 the Chinese discovered America. They were circumnavigated the world well before Magellan. They had this huge, amazing, rich empire, and then all of a sudden the Mandarin Empire decided we're going to become isolationist. They retracted, they burned the books, and all of a sudden they lost all their wealth, they lost all their influence, and the world is totally different than it would have been if they would have maintained. I mean, we might be speaking Chinese. Yeah. I mean, and that's what isolationism does. You lose your ability to influence people. You lose your wealth. You lose your influence. You lose your ability to affect your own borders. And that's kind of what isolation results in. And historically, we should learn those lessons. Historically, we should learn what you make this huge investment for decades in a country, billions of dollars, thousands of American lives, and then we decide one day in 1 week we're going to retract without any kind of good plan, and look what it's resulted in. It's horrible leadership.
Total chaos.
And getting back to what what we were briefed going into Afghanistan, I mean, this has been since the beginning. They said the reason they switched sides so quickly is because an average Afghani family just wants to make it to the next generation. Think about that. They say we think like Americans. Mm-hmm. I mean, no matter what I do, the poorest people have cell phones, a computer, usually a car, a gaming system, a big screen TV. Those are our poor people. Now in Afghanistan, those people are literally just trying to make it to the next generation. They're hoping that they don't get killed, that they can actually procreate to the next generation so they can have some sort of ancestry involved. And if they don't pick the right size, they very well, their family memory disappears from the face of the earth. And so they will jump ship to whoever they think is going to live. And if they don't think you're dedicated to their country, to the long haul term, they're going to jump ship right away, which is exactly what happened. We were briefed on this.
Exactly what we did.
10 years ago, I knew about this. And so it's not surprising, but Joe Biden saying, "Oh, why didn't they fight for themselves?" Because you deserted them.
Because they knew that they were going to lose if they did.
That's right. And right now we have 60,000 people. They're probably closer to 80,000 who were allies to us, who did the right thing, who stood up for their nation, that are trying to get out of that country right now that we didn't have a plan for. And quite frankly, if they're discovered, they're going to be killed. Their families are going to be killed. It is a travesty on a world scale. I mean, it's horrible.
One of the big questions that's going around right now is, why didn't we pull those people out? Why didn't we pull the Americans out? Why didn't we get all these people out before we pulled the military? And I mean, it's just basically bass backwards.
Well, think about this. Joe Biden's been in politics for almost 50 years.
Never made a good decision.
He never had any of this. Why didn't you educate yourself? I mean, if you're going to do anything, you educate yourself. If you're going to be the commander in chief, why wouldn't you know what happened in Vietnam? Why wouldn't you see what wars are like, what kind of strategic influence we're going to have in the world? He stuck to politics rather than sticking to learned, age-old philosophy and strategy that wins wars, that wins the hearts and minds of people. If you're going to fight a war, you do it Clausewitzian style. You come in there full force, you win it, and then you can turn over the keys, but you got to be there. That's why we're still in Korea. That's why we're still in Japan. That's why we're still in Germany and all over the world, because that's what stabilizes the world. And if you're going to be involved, if you're going to be a world power, if you're going to be the wealthiest nation in the world, if you're going to be the most powerful nation in the world, that's the commitment you have. Now, if you want to be in isolation, if you want to live in a teepee in the middle of the plains, which some people in America think we all should, we shouldn't have cars, we shouldn't have big houses, we shouldn't have electricity, we shouldn't have wealth, we shouldn't be better than anybody else.
We shouldn't, but they did.
That's right. Yeah. and that's the problem is this idea, this built-in aristocracy, that the only people that should be able to fly around in private jets are government people.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Not what made America great.
Well, we've got a whole long list of things that are going to go on there in that country, and none of it from this point is going to be good. There's going to be a lot in the news over the next week or two or three that's just and it's total chaos over there. And it really makes America look bad. I mean, just the bottom line of it.
And it's a slap in the face to every American that sacrificed to go over there or gave the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, Pat Tillman died there, an American hero. That's just one of thousands of amazing patriots that went over there to do what they thought was right. And that's a slap in our face.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, another slap in the face is the situation that our wonderful president has gotten us into on our southern border. I mean, right now we're going through all these mandates of masks and shutdowns and all this kind of stuff, and he's got a wide open border where they're just pouring across. I mean, I know that you have experience in paying attention to that, so let's talk about the border situation. What's your thoughts on that one?
So, ironically, once again, my father actually taught Border Patrol at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. He was a fleet tech instructor. And another irony is that Obama, when he was running for president, talked about a strong southern border, that you had to have accountability. He was known as the deporter-in-chief. He deported a ton of illegal immigrants. And then all of a sudden the Democrats get this idea that we're going to start overreaching. We're going to do everything we can, not for the good of the nation, but so we can tilt the cards in our favor, whether it be opening up the southern border, embracing everything unconstitutional when it comes to voting rights, stacking the courts. Once again, it doesn't matter how they do it. As long as they get it done, they can cheat all they want. That's why they don't care about voter accountability. That's why they pretend like people of color and immigrants aren't smart enough to get IDs that are free and readily accessible. One of the states, North Carolina, actually had a program when Nikki Haley was governor there, where they actually said, "Okay, we'll pay for you. We'll actually come and pick you up at your door to get you an ID. That's how much we'll do." And you know how many people use that? A couple hundred. Yeah. Because everybody has an ID. If you want to go to a school board meeting, you got to have an ID. If you want to go see a doctor, you have to have an ID. How many people do you know who's never seen a doctor?
Well, I just got through going to my doctor, and the first thing I had to do was give him my ID.
If you buy something, if you go to a doctor, if you go to school, if you've ever gone to school, you got an ID.
How many people don't drink? How many people don't buy cigarettes?
That's right.
I mean, there's ID. That's such a farce of an argument, but it's amazing that they keep focusing on that argument.
That's right. But more to the point with this southern border, it's very ironic. At one point, we were kidding because Joe Biden realized he has to complete some of the border walls because there's such an overload of people in these hospital systems. And by the way, that is a human crisis.
Absolutely.
The people coming across the border who are making it to facilities are in more crowded facilities than they ever were when Trump was president, and yet they're not showing any more videos of that all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you can't get into that. You're not going to see it. It's not going to be politicized. It's not going to be put on the news.
It's not going to be put on social media.
That's right, because all of a sudden, it's not the thing to talk about. It's like when Obama took presidency, all of a sudden, Afghanistan didn't exist, even though they were doing a body count daily when Bush was, and the biggest death toll was during Obama's presidency. People don't realize what a huge impact the media has. A 4-point swing. Liberal professors, 4-point swing is what they say it has on our voting. And think about how close our voting is every year. To have the social media and the news make that kind of impact on America. They're literally owning who's the president and who's winning these major races based on how skewed they are. Like I said, I got censored based on a post that I'm an Afghan expert, and they censor me and they let the Taliban talk.
Yeah, that's amazing that that's been in the news today, talking about the Taliban. They will not, the head of the Taliban, the leader, that he gets on there and they just keep posting it.
Yeah, that's right. But once again,
it's not fact checking anymore. It's just plain censorship.
No, that's right. And remember, you talk about fact check. This last election, Bloomberg dropped 1.5 million against us in the last month of the campaign, and this rolling clouds, and it said politician Rich McCormick. I've never been in politics in my life. Politician Rich McCormick doesn't believe in COVID. No mention I'm an ER doc treating COVID for a living. Doesn't want pre-existing conditions covered. That's how I get paid. And wants older adults to pay 15 to 20 times more for health care. What in the world are you talking about? And they'll take these weird sound bites and just totally skew it. No fact checks, no nothing, because they don't care as long as
it's their narrative.
Their narrative. And I'm sorry I'm all over the maps, by the way, today, guys. I'm just coming off of 2 very long ER shifts. We had 2 physicians go down, one with a heart attack and one with COVID, so we had to pick up some extra shifts. I'm like on coffee and prayers right now. But that southern border right now has actually opened us up to a lot more disease, too, by the way. I treated a patient the other day in the ER, actually just yesterday, who had come from Honduras, had been tested because he was symptomatic, but didn't know the result, and then was just released into the public. So if you have a disease process, it doesn't matter if you have cancer, if you have COVID, if you have pneumonia, if you have diabetes and you're diabetic ketoacidosis, if you have liver failure or kidney failure and you need dialysis from the day you cross the border, by the way, they're going to pick you up at the border, and instead of arresting you and turning you back, by the way, which we've done with millions of people this year, they are going to deliver you to the nearest ER and let you go. So you're going to get free health care, which is going to be, by the way, they debated that in the Democratic debate. Will you give them free health care? Well, the secret is they're already getting it. Millions of people are getting free health care who are not citizens.
Well, they can't turn them away.
And guess what? You're waiting in line behind them, and then you pay their bill.
Exactly.
That's the irony. They're going to get first-class health care after they cross the border illegally, and you're going to wait for them behind them in hour-long waits, hours and hours, and then you're going to pay for their bill as soon as you get up there. Because that's what happens when your insurance companies charge you more to pay for what they don't pay for. Otherwise, the hospitals would close.
Sure.
And they're saying a huge number, thousands and thousands of these people coming across the border who are bringing COVID with them. You want to see why we're having outbreaks all over, especially in Texas and stuff like that? Because they're bringing it with them. We're seeing measles for the first time in the United States for a long time. Why? Because they're bringing it with them. They're not medically screened. And yet, if you go on vacation, if I go on vacation, I go to Europe, guess what? To get back in the United States, you better have a COVID test.
Yeah, they're flying these people free, and they don't even have to have an ID to get on the plane. You try to get on the plane without an ID.
Or a COVID test.
Yeah. Exactly. Something. But the southern border has been, there again, another disaster from day one. It's just been crazy because they're bringing the COVID in. They're bringing other diseases, like you say. They get them on the buses. They ship them. A lot of the states across the South are blossoming and blooming and exploding with COVID, and they wonder why. It's not what the governors are doing. It's the fact of what the president's doing and the administration is doing, sending these people in there that have the COVID, the disease. So,
and they're doing it on purpose. He wants the southern states to be flooded with immigrants. First of all, it's a burden on the economy. He wants to change the demographics voting wise. Ironically, I think eventually the Hispanic community from the southern portion of our board are going to be conservatives because they think like conservatives. They're entrepreneurs. They want opportunity. They're hard workers. They believe in God. They believe in life.
They don't believe in abortion.
I think they're going to be unpleasantly surprised in the long run as we embrace that community. But I want to embrace them in a legal way. I want them to do it right. And I don't think it's fair that so many people in America who are doing it the right way have to wait in line behind people who are doing it the wrong way.
That's one of my biggest things. I had a question. In fact, it was Carolyn Badeau. I was at an event yesterday, day before yesterday, at a hiring event over here at the Gaslight thing, and she said, "I don't know your feelings on immigration." And I said, "Well, quite frankly, I have no problem whatsoever with legal immigration. I have a big problem with illegal immigration." And then she just kind of backed up a little bit and then started preaching the mantra of getting people approved and made citizens that are here and all that. And that's where they stand, is let's just take all these people that are here, let's make them all citizens, then all of a sudden we don't have illegal immigration. Duh.
And once again, it's a slap in the face to the people who've done it right. And
absolutely.
There's tons of people who are from all over the world who are waiting in line, doing the right thing, paying their taxes, who have put in their application, and they're still not approved years later. And matter of fact, they're in jeopardy of losing their visa. They're doctors. They're lawyers. They're people who are of consequence and of benefit to the United States, who have done everything right, who have family here, and yet they're deported.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
There's no logic or reason to it. And ironically, if you're from the wrong country, you can, whether you be from Haiti or from India or other countries that didn't just sneak across the border, you can be deported or not allowed here at all. And that includes Africa. It's disgraceful.
It is. Well, you're a doctor, you're in the ER, you're associated with the COVID. Give us a quick COVID update as far as you're concerned.
Sure. So we are struggling right now in the ER, partially and ironically because of nursing staff, especially shortages. Because of the pandemic, nurses are needed all over the world. And so it's people are hiring at double price. You can travel and get paid double price rather than stay here and get paid less. And so that's caused an instability to the market. Now, the really strange thing is, not to get too political with COVID, but and ironically, somebody will ask you, hey, Rich McCormick, when do you think this this COVID thing will end. And I'm like, I'm just a doctor. Ask a politician, because they're the ones that are going to determine how long this lasts.
Exactly.
It's kind of like any war that we've ever been in. Don't ask me. I'm just a Marine. Ask the politicians how long this war is going to last, because the politicians seem to want to control everything, including this idea that when we should wear masks, how often we should wear masks, when we should get vaccinated, regardless of the situation. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, because that's really important. Understanding that a doctor and a patient and its relationship is just as important as any lawyer and their client. You should not intrude on that. I don't care who you are. This is America. We have some decisions to make that are based on common sense and science and medicine, which is an art form. We shouldn't have government intruding on those decisions. Now, you can try to educate people. That's great. But this is not the United States of America that I know of when we start mandating people do things of their own bodies. I love how all these people who are pro-choice all of a sudden don't want any choice. I mean, there is no consistency in thoughts whatsoever. But we are being overburdened right now in the hospital system. We don't have enough rooms that are staffed by nurses. We do have a huge uptick for those people who don't think that COVID's real. It is real. It is affecting people in droves. We have a large population still being admitted to the hospital. Now, we're not seeing the death rate. You notice we're not talking about COVID deaths. We're talking about positive rates and hospitalizations, but we're doing much better in managing it. Some of it's because we've gotten better at managing it. We realize that intubation is not a good thing. High flow nasal oxygen, steroids in the inflammation stage, the monoclonal antibodies in the initial contagious stage and viral replication stage. We've gotten better at managing it, but also people are either developing some sort of resistance to it, or the Delta variant is much more contagious but not as deadly. We don't know. We're sorting all those details out right now. What I can tell you, though, is about in this last couple weeks, we had around 30% of the people that were admitting to the hospital had COVID and were being admitted for COVID, not with COVID, but for COVID. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, of those people, like I said, not a whole lot of them were dying, but a lot of people were being admitted. Now, for those people who don't want to get vaccinations, I respect that. I'm a choice guy. I really am. But realize that almost every single patient we're admitting is unvaccinated. We have plenty of people testing positive who have been vaccinated, but they're not being admitted because they're not as sick. And that's the benefit of the vaccination. You are less sick. And so I'm a big proponent of it. Now, if you're a kid, kids don't get admitted to the hospital because they just don't get as sick. So I'm not as big a proponent for vaccination for children. That's worth a discussion with your doctor, once again, because there's pros and cons of it. Everything is a percentage game. Everything. So realize that every person has to take chances whether they get it or not, the disease as well as the vaccination. And there's percentages that make it worthwhile to you, and then you have to weigh those benefits versus risks and make a decision based on you. Just like if you're going to use antibiotics. Some people would benefit from antibiotics and some people don't, depending on what disease process we're talking about. Chemotherapy, whatever disease, it's always been up to you and your doctor, and if you don't like what your doctor says, you go find another doctor.
You've always had the ability to say no.
That's medicine. But now all of a sudden we're saying blanket statement. We want all physicians to believe the same thing. All physicians treat the same way. We don't want anybody to think differently. And as a matter of fact, we'll censor you if you don't agree with what we want you to agree with. And that is not American. That's totally against the First Amendment. It's totally against the art of medicine. As a matter of fact, the reason we've had progress in medicine is because we disagree. If we always agreed on everything, we'd never make progress in medicine.
Exactly.
It's when people step out and say, look, I think we should wash our hands in between surgeries. That's a good thing. We made progress. We got less infections. Ironically, the first guy who ever said that was censored. Think about that.
Doesn't surprise me.
And so that's how we don't make progress, is when we censor doctors who think outside the box. Now, that doesn't mean that every doctor's going to be right. And there's some doctors, Dr. Stock, God love him, he made a video recently that went viral, and I got it sent to me by probably 15 people. What do you think about this? I'm like, well, there's some things I agree with, but there's some things I disagree with. If you treat 15 patients and you're a family practitioner, no offense, you're not seeing the sickest patient. I'm in the ER seeing these sick patients, and I've seen hundreds of them. I may have more expertise than you. Don't think that just because you're in a microcosm of your little world that you are speaking on the authority of all doctors. And unfortunately, people buy into that, and you have to be very careful about what your itching ears want to hear, as the good book says.
Yeah.
It has to be based on a consensus, but we should always allow people, like doctors talking to other people, to be able to talk about a disease process and have their opinion. And I can respect that. And I'm okay with people having disagreements, and we can discuss that. But let's not censor people and say we can't have a disagreement, because then we make no progress whatsoever. But this is a very real problem in America right now. We still need to be vaccinated, in my opinion. For anybody who's over the age of 40, anybody who has comorbidities, you're going to have a much greater chance of a good life. And there's a lot of sheepish people I see in the ER every single day, by the way. And I say, why didn't you get the vaccination? Well, because I didn't trust it. And now they're hospitalized, and they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting the disease and feel like crap for a very long time because they didn't want to have the minor side effects that they probably would have had with the vaccination. And I know everybody's worried about the long-term effect of the vaccination. There is a real consequence to long-term effect of having the disease that's much more devastating than having the vaccination. People with scarred lungs for the rest of their life, scarred hearts for the rest of their lives. Just keep in mind that if you're the kind of person that reacts to the vaccination, that's the same DNA that you get in the disease process too, only more. And so if you have a reaction to the vaccination, you're probably going to have the same reaction, only greater, to COVID. So don't buy into this whole hype that vaccination is evil. Remember, Trump came up with this vaccination by cutting regulation. It is a Trump vaccination, and remember, he did a favor to us all by cutting through all the red tape that most presidents would have never done, because it would seem like a lot of a risk. And it's about to be FDA approved, by the way. And I, like I said, for high risk people, I think it's worth it.
Well, you do make a good argument for the vaccine. I'll give you that. And Mike's back there smiling. He knows my thoughts on it.
I respect it. I understand if you don't want to get it. I get it. And especially if you already had the disease process and have the antibodies, which lasts about 6 to 10 months. I get it. And there is a risk when you have antibodies. There is a risk to having the vaccination, by the way, a hypersensitive reactive. So that's worth a discussion at least, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's a choice, and I respect that.
Well, and I'm glad that you do, and I respect people's choice on it too. I mean, it's not a problem with me whether people take it or they don't take it. It's a personal choice.
Yes, sir.
So, all right, we got 2 more things we need to go through quick. Touch on the inflation a little bit. Are we actually going to see long-term inflation?
Well, it depends on long-term. When the economy contracts again, then we'll see inflation, because we're going to have a crash. And if you look at the history of when we do these big spending bills and what follows, there's going to be a crash. There's no way we can continue this. One of the best books I ever read was a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Exceptional book. I highly recommend it to people. It's been around for a long time. It talks about the establishment of the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island here in Georgia, and about how the banking system has relied on over-influencing the government. And anybody who knows anything about the Federal Reserve understands that it's neither federal nor is it a reserve. It's not run by the government. It's a private entity. It
has a lot of control.
Oh, my goodness. It was established by the richest people in America at the time. On a little island where everybody called each other by code names in order to establish this. They've literally, they're the kingmakers. They can get people into presidency. They control the interest rates. They make sure that big banks survive when they shouldn't and when they misbehave. They literally survive off all these economics, and I highly recommend it, because it actually talks about how even in the future, this is well before it started happening, by the way, that how you can use an environmental movement, for example, to justify overspending by government and taxation by government, which is not American, in order to control, once again, the economy and the winners and losers, where you have these big boys using protectionist regulation because they have lobbyists up in D.C. and they will squeeze out everybody else. But the inflation is real. It's going to come. It's based on things we learned in junior achievement when I was in high school, I had too many years ago to count, supply and demand. If you have too much money and the same amount of supply, in this economy, we actually have a contracting economy in some ways, because you don't have the supply that we need that is demanded, but you have more money than you had because the government's just printing it off, and so you're having absolute inflation. There's no way to avoid it. You can pretend to tap it down by controlling the Federal Reserve and say, I'm going to pretend like I have only 2% inflation, but if you look at the cost of living, how much a house costs, how much products cost, how much groceries cost, it is out of control already. A used car, I have a friend of mine who bought a used car who's worth $15,000 more than what he bought it for. A used car. Are you kidding me? Their inflation is for real, and it's very scary, because this cannot continue. And when we're paying people to stay home, and by the way, this goes back into the nursing staff thing too, by the way, when you say, I'm going to not allow you to work unless you're vaccinated, and the nurse is like, well, I've been around this for a year and a half and I haven't had the disease, so I must have done something right, or I have antibodies, and now you're going to force me to get a shot? that I might have an adverse reaction when I haven't had it for a year and a half, when I'm working around these patients every day, I'm not going to work here. So let's pay him to stay home, which is going to make the hospital system work,
exactly.
which is going to make the economy worse. And anybody who knows, if you're paying somebody to stay home, you're the equivalent effect on the economy and lack of taxes versus spending on taxes. It's a 4-time devastation to the economy. And yet we're literally encouraging people to stay home instead of producing the very products we need to keep down inflation. We're spending money by printing it, which is making it. Think about that. We're literally doing the opposite of what we should be doing. And what they're going to do is they're going to start to slowly siphon that off right before the elections to make it look like Joe Biden did something amazing to bring the economy back, right? I'm not going to pay you to stay at home anymore. Oh, look, the unemployment went down. The economy's booming. Because now we're going to have to pay for the piper, though, for that $6 trillion we spent.
Well, it's just like in my business, in the security business, we cannot get people that want to come to work because they're being paid to stay home. And what I tell people, as long as small business is in competition with the government for people, we lose.
Absolutely.
They can pay people more to stay home than I can pay them to be at work.
And it's in every business. It's in construction. It's in the hospital. It's in the restaurant business. Everybody's hurting right now. And it's created by the government.
Absolutely, it's created. Now, last question. Biden's competency. What is your thoughts there? I'm sure that you probably greatly disagree with me. Not. But go ahead.
If you look at clips of him from just 8 years ago, the difference of Joe Biden then and now, he was very Clinton-esque at the time. Now, whether you agree with his politics is kind of beside the point. He's the same politician he always was.
Absolutely.
He believes in the same liberal policies. It's just that the liberals have become so much more socialistic in their approach. I mean, John Kerry and George Bush, when they ran against each other, were almost identical in their policies. If you listen to that debate, if you watched it over again, you'd be like, oh my gosh, they're almost the same person. It's a competition who could spend the most money.
Yeah. But
now there's been this divergence of the parties, where the liberals have literally gone off the deep end, and Joe Biden has bought into it, just like Jimmy Carter. That Democrat Party of, we always used to say, the Kennedys, doesn't exist anymore. No. But let's not go Kennedys. The Clintons don't exist anymore. Wait, even the Obama, the one who wanted to secure the southern border and do all these things that now conservatives would agree on, they're gone. They have literally gone off the deep end where they don't want to follow the Constitution. They want to have the federal government take over the way we run elections, the way we tax, the way we do immigration. Everything's so socialistic, and the way they've married up with social media to the point where they can censor people based on the government working with social media on who they're going to censor. That, my friend, is not socialism. That is communism. Yep. And that should scare everybody out there right now, because it depends on which government's going to be in control. You could be censored next. So don't think that you're going to get away with this. It's just like if you want to have Sharia law over here, be careful, because if you're a homosexual, if you're a woman, that's not going to be a very liberal thing for you.
Not going to be very good for you.
And I think if you look at Joe Biden, once again, then versus now, the smooth-talking guy that he was, the very Clinton-esque way he would approach politics, he could take a question and interpret it and just like Bill Clinton, handle it very, very politically. Now, he doesn't have the mental facilities to even handle a friendly question sometimes. I remember during the work up to his election, he had a friendly guy in a business ask him a friendly question, and he got persnippety. He wanted to fight the guy. And I'm like, what the heck's happening here? He misperceived what was happening, and that's his mental, he's basically his senility, making him paranoid, and he starts to get very frustrated. You can see it. He's not the smooth guy.
Just immediate defense.
Yep, and that's very common of people who, as they get older, lose their mental faculties. Now, it's not happening to Bernie Sanders, and I totally disagree with his politics,
Absolutely.
But he's still very sharp.
He's
but
sharp.
Joe Biden is not there. It's not just one snippet. It's not him just falling down the stairs like Gerald Ford. This is a continual daily thing where he does not have the ability to handle questions, to stay on train with his thought process, does not have the ability to pivot on any sort of unexpected question. He is not there. He is not the Joe Biden we once knew, and he's really not the president.
Yeah, there's you can just watch him, and it's a shame because you I really feel sorry for him in a lot of ways, and his family's just pushing him through this. Most families would have kind of said, let's back off a little bit before he actually got elected, but he was damned and determined he was going to be president no matter what, and they were all for it. And now look what we got.
Well, and it's a shame that that we got to this point too, based on a hatred of how I would give anything for a mean tweet right now.
Don't you know?
We'd still have Afghanistan though, and we'd still have a much quicker economy recovering. And it's just hurting my heart.
We wouldn't have chaos.
That's right.
So, well, Rich, thank you so much for being here. I love it when you come on. You've got so much knowledge. You've got so much personal knowledge in all of these areas. I only wish you the best of luck in running for this. If somebody wants to get out and reach in touch and get in your campaign and make a donation, which I know is important right now, how do they get in touch with you? How do they do that?
Well, thank you. We've been blessed. We raised the fourth most in any race against a Democrat incumbent in the United States. We're in a great position for this next election cycle. Our website is richmccormick.us. McCormick like the spice, McCormick. richmccormick.us is how you get a hold of us. You want to volunteer, if you want to donate, if you want to read about who I am. A 16-year military helicopter pilot for the Marine Corps. I went airborne. I spent time as a Navy ER doc, traveled the world in missions all over, in Haiti and in China, and believe it or not, in Hong Kong at the time, when it was British owned, and all over the world. I just believe in getting involved, getting dirty, getting the experience that it takes. I believe the good Lord has designed us for this moment in time where we have the right understanding of culture and what makes America great, and a great appreciation for the history of America and what's made all of us have that opportunity that where we can succeed greater than anybody else in the world. Even if you came here from another country, didn't speak the language, don't look like everybody else, have no money, no connections, you can be more wealthy than anybody else in the world in one generation, because this is America and it's unique, and that's what we have to protect.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, we'll just ding on that one. But, thank you so much again for being here. You've got all the right tools in the toolbox. I hope the people wake up and in this election that things go your way. I know that our nation needs it, that's for sure. Well, thank you all for joining us on Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services, and in part by Sotheby's Garage and Manna Scholarship Fund. Be sure to join us for the live broadcast every other Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. here on Business RadioX. If you miss the live broadcast, no worries. You can enjoy the show anytime you want by visiting businessradiox.com, selecting the Gwinnett Studio, and then clicking on Case in Point. This program is also available in iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. Please be sure to subscribe to that on that subscribe button to Case in Point so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Again, thank you, Dr. Richard McCormick. Thank you very much. And Al, thank you for sitting over here and monitoring. And our producer, Mike. And again, I am Rick Strawn. And remember, at Paradigm Security Services, we cover more than just your assets.
A family-owned shop in Loganville, Sotheby's Garage, for all your automotive repair needs. We service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. We repair engines, alternators, brakes, alignments, AC systems, and more, using certified technicians with over 90 years of combined experience. We also offer same-day service for some repairs. Sotheby's Garage, 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville. Dependable, honest, and fair. Look us up on Google or Facebook. We'll take good care of you.